Hello everybody. In today's Touchdesigner tutorial, we will be learning this artwork and how to create that into Touchdesigner. Well, from the looks, it could be looking very complicated. But in reality, this is a very simple and really nice way of using some of the most fundamental blocks of Touchdesigner. And with the usage of those, this entire artwork can be created. And if you look at the network seems very simple. It's just that in order to apply colors, I had to use different geometry. But if you look at it, this is a very simple network that we have created. So it's again like, I always go with the same approach that a network should be very simple, and that's how we are going to learn how to create this entire artwork. The other reason for me to produce this tutorial was there were so many requests by everybody that they would really like to go ahead with the tutorial of this. So I thought like, let's just go ahead and create the tutorial for everybody. So let's get going. All right, so first thing first, let's clear our canvas. Now, there are a few things that we would want to do is we definitely need waves, we need circles, we need these dots, and we need these lines. So pretty much it's all about patterns that we would be going through. So the first thing that we have to do is let's define a constant. So this is the constant which will play a major role for us. So I'm going to define speed as one of the parameters. Second, I will be defining cycle as one of the parameters. Third parameter that I would want to pass is going to be length. So these are the three parameters that I would definitely need as a part of the execution. Okay. Now, since I'm going to deal with multiple different circles and the dots and the waveforms, I might start with a base. So let's have base, and I can just name it as base 1 at this point of time. Let's leave it as it is. And let's go into chop and let's use in. So that allows us to feed in things how it comes from. So let's feed everything which is coming from the constant. So this allows us to select and use things as and when we need it. Now, since we are in base, let's get on with that particular task. Within base, I will define one more constant. Now, this constant is going to be native for base 1. So anything and everything that you define here has no impact on the constant which has been designed or defined here. So both the constant are independent of each other. Okay, so first thing first, what I really need is I want a speed. So let's use speed, and the value of speed is going to be driven from the constant defined from the outside. So this is one. Then I also need a cycle, and this cycle will be driven based on the constant defined outside of the base. Then I will be using something called as amplitude. We'll see how this amplitude is going to work. Now, since amplitude is a parameter which is not being passed from the outside of constant, we'll leave it as it is. And then we are going to introduce length. Now, this length will be driven from the constant defined outside of the base. Now this is good. First thing first, let's go and define the constant which is outside of the base, which is inside the project. So in the speed, I will be saying ABS time dot seconds into 0.25. Okay, so this is the speed that I would want to start with. At this stage, I'm going to say I'll need cycle of 3. And the length, I will just give a value as 7.5. Okay, So these are just the initial values that we are defining, and this is going to be helpful once we start developing things inside our base. So then you will be able to realize the importance of speed, cycle, and length and how it is impacting the individual base. Okay, so this is good for us. This actually helps. Now, we'll start with patterns. So let's go and use the pattern. Let's rename this pattern as TX. Since we have all the constants defined inside our base, let's start utilizing it. So first thing first, number of cycles are actually defined inside the constant. So let's use number of cycle and put it up here. As in when I change, I see the change in my pattern input. Then I have the amplitude, which I'm not going to use it at this point of time. Then I've got length. This length will be used for a different reason. So let's not use it for now. I have got phase, and this phase will be driven by the input value of speed. So let's go and use this speed for phase. So as and when the values are changing, here we can see the movement and the waveforms. So this looks absolutely stunning. Now, I can define amplitude at this point of time as 1. So let's just go with amplitude as 1. So now I go and select this amplitude and put it up into the amplitude value of pattern 1. Done. So this looks absolutely good. What we do is let's copy this pattern, let's paste it. Now let's change this TX to TY, and the pattern of this, the waveform, instead of sine, we are going to use it as cosine. So this looks good. Now let's use merge. So merge will come into play, and all right, so at this point of time, we will be going ahead with one more constant. And I'll be defining two values there, Tx and Ty. I will be using one more operator called as bind, which is going to bind the values of Tx and Ty from merge and constant, and it's going to give me the current values of Tx and Ty based on the merge. So these values will help me to draw a circle, okay? So let's go and use null, and let's go to SOP. Let's define a circle. So this is going to be a circle. Let's change the radius from 0.1 to 0.05. We can change it later on. Now the center position is going to be driven based on what null is providing it to us. So we use TX, we use TY to define the center of circle. Done. Now, once this is done, there is another thing that I definitely want is the circle. So this circle, these circles that you see, that needs to be defined as well. So how do we do that? All we do is let's have one more null, which is coming out from merge, and we can go chop to. All we have to do is chop to and SOP. So this defines a circle. So this is good. Now let's use merge. Let's merge them together. So now we can see this is pretty much doing the same stuff that we need. Now, currently you see the circle line as black, but that can be overcome once we have the constant defined as a part of geometry. Okay, so that can be handled. So this is good to go for us. The other thing that we definitely need is the waveforms, right? Now you would be wondering how to create these waveforms. So waveforms can be created again by reutilizing the same stuff that we have. So I will be using TY. So I'm copying and pasting it. And then I need one more pattern. So I can use this pattern of TX and paste it. Now, instead of sine and instead of phase, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make phase as 0. Instead of sine function, I will be using it as ramp. And number of cycles, I do not need it, so I'm just going to leave it as 1. Amplitude, we'll leave it as 1 at this point of time. And let's see how well the waveforms are coming up. Okay, so let's use one more merge from chop. Let's have these waveforms. And now let's have one more null. And let's use this null to define the chop too. So the moment I do that, I actually see an output coming up. Now you would be wondering that the output of this waveform is very squeezy. I mean, I literally want to define things further. I want to define things further, right? And that is where a length comes into picture. So what I really want to do is, instead of amplitude defined here, I will be using length function to define the amplitude of pattern 4, which is nothing but a ramp. And as soon as I do that, my waveforms are a bit longer and it's not stretchy at all, right? And you can see the difference. So if I make it as 1, you see the squeezy sine wave. But if you just define it based on the length variable, I see a proper definition, a proper length, expanded length of the sine wave function. Done. Now this looks good as well. The other thing that we want to do is I can use this existing merge and I can merge them together. But what's going to happen is this merge is not going to help me to define that space. So if you look at the output, I have the circle and I have this waveform starting here. So what I'm basically doing, I'm actually creating a space between the circle and this dot and the waveform which is being generated through it. So at the end, in order to achieve that result, all I have to do is I can use transform, and I will be using the transform, and I will say let's shift the waveform which is coming up by 3 units. So previously it was coming up at 0, but now it is coming up as 3rd unit. Now let's use this and apply it here. And you can see the waveforms are coming out to be perfect, right? So this looks absolutely nice. But the other question that you might be having is, how do we get that line? Because we want to, if you look at this, we have these lines coming up, and these lines are increasing and decreasing depending on where the dot is coming up. So let's define a line first. So let's keep it aside for now. Let's have a line function, line sop. Now one thing we know for sure, that this line has got x position which is constant. So if you look at it, everything is moving on the x-axis, which is at the 3rd unit. So let's go and change the point B, and let's put x position as 3. So one thing is good, that we know x position. Now you would be wondering, what is the y position? So y position is nothing but defined based on the ty, right? So let's have this ty changing the point B. Done. So you can see ty is defining where it should go. Done. Now we just need to concentrate on point A. Now how do we get point A? Point A is very simple basically. What I really need, I need my point A should be the center point of this dot. And we know that center point of this dot is driven by Tx and Ty. So let's go and apply Tx and let's apply Ty to define the line. Now you would be wondering, how does it really work? So let's go and merge it together to get an output. Do you see now how the line is coming up? So that's exactly what we need as a part of our output. Done? Now you would be wondering, how is it going to turn out to be as an output, right? So let's use a null and let's make it as out. Done? And now since this is my base and I've got in and I've got sop as an output, now let's use null for now. Let's define the output here. Let's define geometry. Let's define camera. Since we have geometry, let's define constant as a material. Done. Let's have render network. So we'll use render, null, and RGB key. Okay, this looks good. Let's change the viewing angle of camera. Instead of 15, let's increase it to 15. Instead of 0x position, let's minus it. Let's make it as 4 for now, or 3. Oh, this can be changed. There is no problem at all. So now this is absolutely looking the way in which we need it. So this defines in a very simple way what we have done is we have created a base, and base has got everything in it. Let's define something good here. I'm copying base and I'm making it as base 2. Now base 2, in order to have it more, let me define a merge here. So I'm merging it, but I don't see anything coming up. Now that change can be defined by changing the amplitude here, right? So instead of 1, I make it as 2. So by making it as 2, I see the output. But this is going to be very, very cumbersome if I have to keep on going into individual bases, because I might have multiple circles coming in, right? So that can be literally avoided just by using a simple formula. So what I'm going to do is I would have to define value of amplitude based on a generic function. So that generic function is I will be reading the digit of my parent, which is base, and I will be multiplying it with a factor, so that for base 1 the factor will be multiplied against it. So let's use that function and we will see how the output is coming up. Okay, so the function that I will be using will be me dot parent 1 dot digit. Okay, so it's going to be digits. So I get digit. So if I use base 1, now let's go and delete base 2. Control C, Control V. And depending on the value of base, it's giving me the output. Done? So this is a very generic way of producing things, but it is still a big difference for me. So I will be multiplying this value with 0.25. Okay, so now if we see, we get a proper output that we need. So now let's go and give it a try. Done. This looks much better, and this looks even better. So we have, now you can define multiple bases just by copy pasting it, and automatically the value of the amplitude will be defined based on the value defined here. So this is looking absolutely stunning. Still, there are things which are remaining. So we definitely need colors, right? And that color can be produced by just creating individual geometry. So I will be removing this merge, and I would just go with this one. Done. So this is my one. Let's copy paste things, and let's use this as an output. So this is my 2. Now let's change the color of constant from white. What is the first color? The first color that we have is red. So let's change the color from white to red. So this looks nice. Let's copy paste things again. And let's use base 3 input to null. And let's change the value of, let's change, what is the other color? We have yellow. So let's go and change it to yellow. So this looks good. The other thing that you would be wondering is if you want to increase the height or increase the thickness of the line, how would you do that? So that thickness can be increased just by, so we go to wireframe, we change it to GPU tesseled wireframe, and line width we can make it as 2. So this brings us the thickness. The same thing can be done in second constant which has been defined. So let's make it as 2. And same thing we do it for the fourth constant material that we have defined. So let's make it as 4. Oh, sorry. Make it as 2. So this looks good. And similar thing can just be created for the other one. Let's change the color from yellow to green. Let's go and set it up as green. This is wonderful. And let's copy paste one more time. And let's apply color as blue color. We go here and we make it as blue. So this is how we can regenerate things in a much more better way. You could be thinking, how do we go about if we want these lines to be of white color or gray color? We don't want that line to be very, very prominent. So that also can be done. And it's kind of very simple. So instead of outputting one channel, let's output 2 things. So I define one more out. And in that out, I will be disconnecting this line. So I disconnect and I put it up as out 2. Done. Now again, I will be deleting all of these. So Control C, Control V. So we have 5. Done. Now we go and use out 2 into this defined merge that we have. So let's merge all the white lines there. Okay, so this looks nice. And now I will copy paste same objects here. Done. Instead of getting an input from base 5, I will get the input from merge. So this looks nice. Now we have got all as blue color. Let's go to constant. Let's make it as white. Done. Now, instead of making this as bright white, I would change this to gray. So this looks nice. And the other thing that I could do is I can change the line width from 2 to 1. So this looks very subtle and it gives me an absolute perfect output that I really need or I look forward to. And this is how this whole stuff can be created. So you would be wondering how beautiful things can just be created by using very, very fundamental blocks of Touchdesigner. And this is where the beauty of Touchdesigner comes into action. The other thing that I would want to tell you is how these waveforms are going to help. So let's go and play around with the constant that we have defined. Let's say currently the speed is 0.25. I can change to 50. So the waveforms are going to be very quick. Currently the cycle is 3. I can change it to 4. So you see more number of cycles. Currently the length is 7.5. I can reduce it or I can increase it the way in which I need it. So that's how we can define it. So let's change it to 7.5 for now. The cycle, I can reduce it. And you can see the straight lines coming in if it is 0. If I make it as 1, it turns out to be a beautiful design. At this point of time, I've got only 5 bays. I can introduce 6th bays. All I have to do is copy paste things, put the values there, change the colors, And I can have pink as the color, and I can define the out value to this merge, and we have another output. So there is a lot of flexibility that we have with this entire design. Definitely there is a lot of you could do with changing the speed. I can make it as zero 0.1, which will be very, very slow, very fluid, but I can make it as 1.1 as well, which is going to be very quick. So depending on your taste, depending on your flavor, depending on your thoughts, you can change things the way in which you like it, and you could do a lot. By the way, there is other thing that I've defined, which I'm just going to keep it for my Patreon. So if you look at it, I have redefined this entire project, which I'm going to share this file with my Patreon. So if you look at it, I've got a flag here, and that flag is nothing but random. So currently you see the waveforms are turning out to be very, very very simple. But that can be made random. So just by changing the flag, I can introduce complete organized chaos in the waveforms. So for my Patreons, this is something I'm definitely going to give them. I would really like if you become my Patreon. It's really a big support because there's a lot going around here. Your support is definitely going to help me a lot, and I would really appreciate, if you could become my Patreon and support me that way. So yeah, this is just going to be exclusive for my Patreon, and I will be uploading this file for my Patreon, and they will be able to access it in a best possible way, and they would know how to define this entire thing. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. I'm definitely going to bring a lot of good tutorials like this, which is definitely going to open up lots and lots of possibilities for designers out there, and you could produce really, really great output. Well, I'll definitely come back with a lot of good tutorials, and I say goodbye from Sydney at this point of time. I hope you have a really wonderful weekend. Bye for now.